Hi, everyone. It's very nice to be here. Are you guys nervous? No? Okay, because maybe you should be, because there's a lot of pressure on you guys. Sorry, but first of all, not to fall asleep. It's late. I don't know about you guys. I'm not in a full-time job. I'm usually midway through my afternoon nap at this time. That's the joy of freelancing. But also, you're going to have to work on this presentation with me. So I'm not sure anyone told you this, and I know you came here to hear some, cool stories from me. You're going to get those, but I'm also going to have to ask you guys to work with me. And to explain to you why, let me just say I normally work with recruiters. So I usually just work with recruiters who need an introduction into sourcing. It's not very high-level stuff. It's rather easy. But what I see is if you don't make people work a little bit, they don't actually change anything about how they do things. And I'm not a great show person or anything, but my greatest ambition is to make you change at least one thing about the way you source your candidates, and have you do just at least one thing that you wouldn't normally do after this presentation. So this is why you have to work with me, guys. And we're going to be talking about creative sourcing, about the way you can source candidates that hopefully no one has ever tried before. The paradox of this is I'm going to use stories of what other people already did to inspire you to do that. So you can see it's not very easy. The idea behind it is you get inspired and you think of your own creative way to source people. So I'm going to tell you about 6 different stories that are probably a little bit out there. I'm going to come back to some more day-to-day stuff that you can do at your desk every single day. But before we do that, I'm going to need you to use your smartphones for this. Before you do that, I'm going to have to ask you to go to that address, type in that code, and tell me what you associate with creativity. So I told you, I'm going to make you work. This is it. So just work with me, guys. And as you see at the bottom in the corner there, I can see how many people responded. So I know more or less, how many of people are in the room right now. So please, please do this for me. Work with me and just tell me what is the first thing you think when someone asks you, what is creativity? What's a creative approach to anything really? Perfection, work, freedom, synthesis. Oh, this is cool, isn't it? This is an experiment, by the way. I'm using this tool for the very first time with such a big audience. I usually do it during workshops, so it's easier to manage a little bit. But I think it's very interesting what's happening here. And I'm only gonna use the ideas that actually fit into my narrative here, but you come on and just give us some more answers here. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of art and freedom. Ideas. This is so good. It's so dynamic, isn't it? Well, you can also use this, by the way. It comes as a free tool, which you can use at a team meeting for a presentation. It's kind of cool because you guys are anonymous, but, we get all this information live from you. So this is very good. So there are some obvious associations, like freedom and fun is the main focus for us today. But something I saw earlier that happened was work. Someone put it work. And to be fair, when we think of creative ways to source, it seems like a lot of work. It seems like a nice thing to read about, that someone else did it, but it's just like if you're going to have to come up with a whole creative strategy, that's not your work, is it? You're a recruiter. Maybe you manage a recruitment team, but you're not really creative. And this is a big myth that we all have to deal with. We don't necessarily feel we're creative people because we're stuck in our processes, but we have to get out of them to see that creativity is a big part of what we do. And A lot has been said already in previous presentations, and I especially like the point that Hung made about the recruitment process being so hard because we created this rigid structure that we have to stick to, but we don't really. It's just something we choose to do. And so I'm going to talk to you about the maybe more difficult ways to source people. But let's start with why people actually use LinkedIn so much. You can like slides, by the way, if you want to. If there's a part that you like it. If there's a part you don't like it. I'm going to know what's rubbish in my presentation after that. So I can work on it a little bit, thanks to you guys. But LinkedIn is our comfort zone. And a comfort zone is called that for a reason. It's the easiest way to do things. It makes us feel comfortable and good about ourselves, which is great. It's just we're not really the center of the recruitment process, are we? Well, we're not supposed to be. It's supposed to be the candidates. And so if we're the ones feeling comfortable, but the candidates aren't, maybe there's not, maybe there's something we should change about the way we do things. And the truth is, I'm not going to, tell you not to use LinkedIn or job boards or any other sources at your disposal, because the truth is, you're going to close most of your jobs using LinkedIn, probably. You can definitely try to, at least. The difficulty there is in standing out, is in being different, because everyone else is already there, because it just happens to be the comfort zone for all of the recruiters, not just you in particular. And because of that, the standing out part is a little bit hard. So this is also why it's a little bit more important to focus on some creative ideas. It's that, but it's also just making your job fun. Because I often ask people, how often do you smile when you source? People think I'm a freak for asking it. I'm not. I honestly, I like to source, I don't do it anymore, so maybe that's why. But it's fun when you do it, and it can be fun. And doing it outside of LinkedIn is going to make your lives just a little bit more interesting. But first, what do you need to do it? You need a positive attitude towards experimenting. And it might not be something that your companies encourage you to do, in which case I would say do it anyway. And then see what happens. If you get into a lot of trouble, you may think it's bad, but I used to get in trouble for the mistakes I made all the time. Now I'm here talking to you, so somehow in the end it worked out. And I was still able to find candidates in the end, at the end of the day. If you find the candidates, no one's going to tell you off for the ways you did it. So just think about experimenting. Try a little bit more, experiment on a small scale, and then gather evidence to bring a business case to your company to convince them to do things on a larger scale. That's something that you can easily do with recruitment, because you can build a business case around one role, and then if something works, you can roll it out and use that sort of new recruitment process, new recruitment campaign for all of the roles in a given department, for example. Now, you're also going to need a little bit of empathy and a very strong understanding of your target audience. And I have no certification in design thinking whatsoever, but I've once seen someone do this in a workshop. So this is how I know it can work. So what happened is I worked with this other trainer, and she's a certified design thinking moderator. So she worked on the empathy map with the recruitment team. We took that later for our sourcing exercises. And you know what? Magic happened. What happened there is she actually had interviews with people from the target groups that the recruiters in the workshop used for creating this empathy map. They would basically take different statements from the interviews and place them on the map to understand their candidates better. And this allowed them to think about the candidates without judgment. That is very important, right? Because very often we think, oh, that person just wants more money. Ugh, that's horrible. You don't want that in a candidate. But frankly, if someone offered you a little bit more money, you wouldn't really say, no, I'm above that. That does not speak to me at all, right? So we don't want to judge our candidates. Instead, we want to understand them better, to know how to really get to them. And this is very important, because the moment you forget about this and you come up with a great creative strategy that makes you laugh, that makes the entire team laugh and everything, you can easily forget that it's not going to speak to any of your candidates. You're not your own target group. So just because you don't like a solution, a sourcing strategy, doesn't mean it's not going to work, because you're not the candidate. So just think about the candidates instead. And here I'm going to tell you about a couple of stories that I think are interesting. Please notice no text on these slides, because I knew I was coming last. I wasn't going to, inundate you with a lot of text, so you don't have to take any notes. You're only going to help me with my slides later on. And I am going to ask you about your favorite ideas from all of the 6 that I'm going to present to you. So try to remember what they are. I'm going to make it easier by giving them fun names. The first one is a Trojan Horse strategy. And I think it's my favorite. I've seen this happen on multiple occasions, but it's not something that we very often talk about. And I've seen this happen twice on the Polish market. One time it was a little bit more obvious, one time it wasn't, until the company that did it actually presented their case. So what happened is, imagine you're in an agency. This was used for creative agencies, but really a recruitment agency will work just as well. Imagine you're in an agency that has a great brand, and everyone knows if they get even one of the recruiters of the team, they're going to be lucky, but really it's just full of amazing candidates, that recruitment agency, right? So you're all just potential candidates to someone else. And imagine you get a gift. You get a piñata that's actually shaped like a horse. That was the case in this scenario, but it can be any gift like that that the team can enjoy. The brilliance of it was that obviously, if you get a piñata, you're gonna smash it, right? That's what you do. There's candy inside. I mean, I've never done it myself, but I would probably know how to handle one. And obviously, this is what happened. And it happened in several creative agencies. And inside, people found candy that looked just like any other candy in the world. And no one knew what was going on until some of the people started having the candy. And inside the candy wrapper, there was a recruitment message, right? An approach message that said, I can't really remember what it said, but you can put anything in there. Let's just say it said, hey, what if work was fun every day? Join us. Or give people a link to a website. Then they might not even know that it's a recruitment message until they actually go visit that website. The guys were very happy with this and actually shared their result just because it was such a success. So it was really not a secret anymore by the end of the campaign. And I know it's sensitive because you don't want to, jeopardize the relationship you have with your competitors, but still, it's a cool idea if you're going after a lot of people who are in that same space, in that same office. It's very fun, and it's definitely going to get your brand out there because people are going to talk about it. A more invasive idea was when one of the companies opening up in Krakow sent their recruiters armed with donuts to the office of a competitor. So the recruiters would stand outside the office, give away donuts, and inside each pack of donuts, there was a recruitment message. So obviously what happened? The recruiter from that company, the target company, shared the picture because she was so outraged that someone was doing this. She later said she regretted it because that was her most popular post on LinkedIn ever. So basically, she did this promotion for that competitor by sharing the recruitment message with the entire world. Trojan Horse, really fun to do. I mean, you're definitely gonna see it's fun to do. And it could work, you know, why not try it? Another idea is a postcard, because it's very easy not to open an email. I bet you got a lot of emails today that you didn't open, and in fact, you're not even considering opening them. You're not gonna do it tomorrow, not ever. But it's very hard not to open a physical letter when you get one. I mean, did you ever get a letter and not open it? You can raise your hand to this time. I have no additional question for that. But I don't see any hands raised. This is because we tend to think that physical mail, is more important somehow. And it's especially true if you're a contractor. Now, you're going to have to tell me more later on about the Czech market. But in Poland, what happens is if you're a contractor, you have to register your own company. And so that company has to be publicly available in terms of email address, physical address, and phone number. And so you basically have the home address of your future employees. You can just send them a postcard. Say it's a postcard from the future. Say it's, you know, something fun like it's the HR team, you know, in next year you're going to tell us that if you only knew about the company, you'd definitely apply, and this is what you said this message to your younger self should say. It's kind of fun, but it also allows you to put in some more time to understand your candidate. Because consider this, what if you told your candidate not about what the role is, but what they can achieve and experience in your company over the next 12 months? That clearly shows it's hyper-personalization, right? That clearly shows that you've made the effort of thinking what they can do in your company as opposed to anywhere else. So that's just another idea here. I'm not sure if you've ever played Pokemon Go in particular, but there's a bunch of games like that. And games are also a very cool idea of getting to know people. Why? Because people who tend to play games, especially social games, they build relationships quite easily. And I know this because I'm going to admit this on stage now. I used to play Pokemon Go quite a lot. I used to play it with my nephew, but also with my mom. It turns out we made a lot of friends in the neighborhood, and we're now very much missed because we got pretty good at it, not to brag. But the thing is, if you get into a group like this, and you might already be a part of some geeky group that you didn't even consider you could use for recruitment, you can actually use this to build relationships with your target audience. How can you do this? Well, I've heard of recruiters who started playing Pokemon Go with the sole purpose of meeting candidates. And what they would do is, you have gyms in Pokemon Go. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Would anyone admit it other than Hung? You don't have to, it's fine. But anyway, you have like gym locations in the game, and you would only know where they are located if you play the game. So it's not like a physical thing, you can't just stick your advert onto it. But if you go there, you're going to find other people who are also playing. And the game's changed since the first launch, so it's even more social, so you kind of need to play in groups in order to succeed. And what recruiters did was, they would go to gyms located near their competitors. And they would obviously find a lot of their employees there. They would just start chatting, because you're obviously going to be open to having a chat with a fellow gamer. And only then, when you start asking people, oh, so do you work far from here? Is this your lunch break? What do you do? You get your information, and you open the door for a conversation about what you do as well. Because, you know, people are likely to ask you back, oh, I'm a developer, what do you do? Oh, that's crazy, I'm actually a recruiter. You know? But they already like you, you know? It's not like they're going to tell you, oh, yeah, we're not playing together. Let's just forget about it. So you're already winning them over by actually having something in common with them. And you've shown that, it's very hard to do when you're not actually into this, but if you can show them this is something that I'm also into, I've made this effort to understand the game so I can build a relationship with you, I think in that case, it's fair game. You can also go shopping for candidates. And this was the very first creative sourcing strategy I ever heard about. I did not take part in it in any way. I was still, I think I had like a couple of months of experience. And what happened was some of my colleagues were recruiting for a sports shop. One of those big brands, and they needed great salespeople because there was a new shopping mall opening in Krakow. And it was a long time ago. It must have been 2012. So there was no graph search. You couldn't search Facebook for candidates. Maybe you could run a campaign, but you couldn't use it to source candidates, which would have been the obvious choice for me now, right? Find someone who likes sports shoes, bam, message them, case closed. But you couldn't do that back then. And the thing is, I don't know if you know a lot of salespeople who sell sports shoes, but they don't tend to be on LinkedIn. Crazy, right? But somehow they think they don't need to be on there. They might not even know it exists. So what did this team do? After spending a week or two getting completely depressed because they wouldn't get any response to their ads, and it was a good brand too, it's not like it was a brand that people wouldn't know, they finally decided that's never going to work. Their team leader said, drop everything you're doing, let's leave the desks and let's go shopping for shoes. And anyone you like, anyone who's nice to you, who's attentive, who asks the right questions, who's compelling, who actually, bonus points if they actually make you buy shoes, anyone like that, you tell them about this job. And guess what? Turns out they hired everyone they needed. And I happened to tell this story at a conference in Berlin a year ago, and this recruiter told me that's very funny because it's actually what we did when we needed people to sell phones, smartphones. You want someone who lights up, who looks like they know what they're talking about, who is a little bit geeky when it comes to smartphones. And the genius of this idea is that the sourcing process is the selection process as well. Because if someone actually manages to get you to consider buying a new smartphone, that is the person you want to hire, right? And if you come in, they don't notice you, probably someone that you can avoid speaking to in the first place. Now, this last one, it's an idea that I got. Someone actually told me this is what they would do. They actually even showed me the Lego set they would send out to people. And this is more for senior people because if you're going to send out gifts, you kind of want to, make sure that it's the right people, right? So you're not going to just send it out to thousands of people. But if you send out a thoughtful gift to your candidates, that can solve all of your problems when it comes to the open rates, etc. As I've mentioned before, sending a physical item through mail can get you more engagement, right? Because people will open that. The tricky part is, in some companies, apparently, the reception desk will look through all of your mail. So if that happens, if it's an item, it's not going to happen. If it's a postcard, it might actually happen. If that happens, it's not great. But you can do this with physical items, because what you do is you can send out a Lego set that, in this particular case, was only meant to build a computer. It was a tiny computer, and it had the company logo on it. And I believe the message was, again, can't really remember it word for word, but it was something like, now that we've built something together, why don't you come in and talk to us about building something more? And it's amazing, right? I've heard about this case, and I believe that one was in Australia, where a company identified like 10 people that could do a job. 10 is not a lot, right? I mean, I speak to recruiters who need 10 interviews just to fill a role. So if you only have 10 candidates on the market that can do the job, it's tricky, right? So what did they do? They got iPods, and they had their hiring manager record a video that they uploaded into the iPods that they sent out to candidates, and that was their recruitment message. Pretty cool, right? I mean, you're not going to want to buy an iPod for every single candidate you approach, and I get that. But in a very tight market, for a leadership role, it's something you might actually consider. And perhaps there's something a little bit cheaper that you can find than an iPod. I'm sure there is. And finally, because I hate when everyone focuses on IT and how hard IT is and how it's so difficult to recruit in IT. If you're looking for developers, it's not, because they are online. It's the very nature of how they behave, right? Either they don't want to be found, in which case you just don't bother, right? Because you're not going to find them. Or you can find them online, and it's fairly easy to find them. It's just a matter of sending them the right message. But there are industries that are even harder, and I'm wondering if there's anyone here who actually ever did that. But I've been talking to recruiters who hire temporary workers, and they say that is the worst. I mean, IT is super easy compared to that, but hiring temporary workers is really, really hard, and hiring people for production roles, etc., that's really hard because they're not online. Most of them, get this, most of them don't even have smartphones. So you're not going to find them on Facebook because they're not there. You might use text messaging to get in touch with them, but you would actually have to have their number. And this is my favorite thing ever. This story about a recruiter who would, he identified a bus that a competitor would use to get people from a station to the factory. What he did was he got on that bus and he hijacked it. Basically, he got on the bus, told everyone, each of you is getting, say 1 zloty more for an hour. Can we go to a different location today? And obviously they said yes. I mean, it's a different situation, right? They are not as... loyal isn't the right word, but they're not that tied to one particular company. So if you just offer them a little bit more money, ship them somewhere else, it's a little bit better. And after that, you can show them you have better conditions. But the idea is you can find people by going where they're going to take the bus to their work. And we've actually had in Krakow some great campaigns also located in buses where you would have the job ad on the bus seat because people would use those exact buses to get to their work. So this is also something you can consider. Offline sourcing is kind of cool, and I really believe that even though it's harder to know how you did in terms of performance, it's harder to measure that performance. If you've hired people, then that means the job is done, right? So again, this is something that you might want to try. And so we're going to make you do some work now again. I have 3 questions for you. The first question is, how often do you source outside of LinkedIn? Do you think your company encourages you to be creative? And do you want to experiment and try new sourcing methods? Again, fully anonymous, so don't worry about that. What I'm curious about is, it's perfectly fine if you don't want to try new methods not to, and if everything you've been doing is working fine. If a chatbot comes at any point and can do your job better, then, fair is fair. They should get the job. But most people want to try new things. They just don't, because they don't feel they have the time. I think time is the biggest factor. They don't know how to do it. And all of the examples I've showed you, they will probably require some budget behind them. They might require even more time. So it's a little bit tricky, to implement all of those. But I'm going to tell you about a couple of ideas that you can implement starting on Monday in a minute. It's very nice to see that you guys are actually replying to those. I was nervous about this. I thought what if 3 people reply? It's going to be a little bit embarrassing. You're doing awesome though, so thank you very much for this. So how often do you source outside of LinkedIn? This is the question that gets the lowest amount of points, because not everyone does that very often, right? Because again, like I said, you can probably close around 80% of your jobs using LinkedIn and job boards, and that's fine. But what do you do with the next 20% of your time? Especially if you have a company that does encourage you to be creative, that's great. If you don't believe they do, perhaps they just don't know how to do it. It's not that they don't want you to do it, so try it anyway. And then once you have a business case, see where that takes you. And if you want to experiment with new sourcing methods, why not do it? So first things first, I'm going to encourage you to try new platforms. And I only chose that picture because there's a box and there's a cute dog in it. So think outside of the box. There's no relevance of the dog here. But the first idea is use new platforms. So I want you to try GitHub and Stack Overflow if that's something that could work in your area, but you don't use it. I want you to try something as crazy as Goodreads. If you read a lot, it's easy to set up an account. I fell in love with the platform, and I now use it in my everyday life, which is why it would be fairly easy for me to send a message to someone and say, hey, you've read this book about programming in Java. You probably do that. Do you think it's a good book? And then once we've started talking, I can send a recruitment message, right? So it's a little bit easier to build a relationship, but it's not Facebook. It's not that personal. People are there to talk to other people who read books. So you're not invading their space, and that's what I like about it. You can use Meetup, the platform, because Meetups are great, but if you don't have the money for beer or pizza, and I never did, what you can do is you can go to a Meetup someone else organizes, and I mean an online version of that meetup on the platform, and you can message almost everyone on the platform for free. So imagine this, someone else feeds people pizza, has them drink beer, they're all happy, and then you come in with your message. And what I love about Meetup as well is it allows you to be a little bit sneaky. So what you can do is send a message that says, oh, I missed you at the last event. Of course you did, you weren't there, but they don't know it, do they? And it's not like you're lying, you're just, telling the story in a way that allows them to make an assumption, which I would say is fine as long as you only have good intentions. Also, something I want you to try is try internations. If you're ever looking for people that speak other languages, try internations. It's a platform designed for people who have relocated to another country. It's awesome because you can actually search for people based on the language they speak or the country they come from. And they are looking to meet new people, and very often they're looking for help getting a new job. So you can actually help them, as opposed to just staying on LinkedIn and telling everyone your job is to help people. And one last thing I want you guys to try is to look for blogs. That is a very fun thing to do. And I can tell you from experience, if a blogger gets a message that says, your blog is awesome, by the way, can you help me? I know exactly what people are doing. Still, it works every single time because I'm putting so much effort into, sharing stuff with other people that every person that just says, I've seen you have that blog, I already feel like, oh, wow, we have this great relationship now. So it's working. So I am going to help you if you ask me. So this is why I want you to use those platforms to create relationships with people, to source for the 20% of roles that you might not be successful with on LinkedIn. And, and one more thing, you can actually go to meetups. Have you ever tried that? There are some meetups you won't be allowed into because you're a recruiter. What you do is you send in your agent. Identify someone from the team, tell them, we need your help hiring for your team, and anyone you like, I'm going to message them. People like to have that influence over who they will be working with, so they will go along with it. I can promise you that. And because they don't want to work overtime, etc., it's in their best interest that you actually hire someone for the role. Not to mention, it's much better if someone else tells the story about your company. And if it's a developer that's happy to work for you, it's way more credible than you being happy to work for your company. Because not to burst your bubble, but you're kind of paid to tell people it's awesome, right? So when you do say it, it's just a little bit less credible. And this is funny because, you know, I don't know if you've noticed that same trend on LinkedIn, but whenever I go in, there's some employer branding person saying how amazing it is to work for the company, you know, sharing a picture of the whole employer branding team having a great time. Again, those people are paid for it, so it kind of looks like, you know, they're not trying hard enough because they should find people within the company that are happy, but that's a story for a different presentation. But go to those meetings, because if I talk to any one of you, it's a little bit easier having that conversation, right? And you can actually identify speakers at meetups and go talk to them. You know, you can approach them directly, or you can ask them, because just start with a compliment to put them in the right mood. Just say something like, that was an awesome presentation. Clearly you know a lot about the subject. So if I'm going to build this and that, who do I ask to do it with me? Who should I talk to? And that's a very different question to, listen, I have a job to fill. Can you refer someone, anyone, right? So it's also about the phrasing of the question. And that leads me to my last point. Think about the message. Just the message, make it fun. If it's not fun for you, if it's this boring thing that you wrote, that you felt like it's homework, you know, when you wrote it. I see this a lot because I make people write recruitment messages in training. They hate it. And I only give them 5 minutes. They hate that even more. Just make the message fun for you. Just try to do something different. Like, I looked into this. Get this, you can buy tiny glass bottles. And you can actually send people out messages in a bottle. I mean, perhaps that's not a great idea because it makes me laugh, but I don't know about your candidates. But it's just a start, right? So just think about what people in your area could appreciate, what your target audience wants. And I will go back here to just remind you about that empathy map and the whole design thinking process. Look into that. It sounds awesome and people are getting amazing results with it. So just think about how you could actually do that. And it doesn't have to be anything physical. It could be a video. It could be an audio message. It could be a written message. But just make it fun. And don't just copy something someone else has done. This is why all of the ideas today, I wasn't very specific about them. I don't want you to go out and just copy an idea I've mentioned one-to-one, because that's no longer being creative. It's very hard to be creative when you're just doing something someone's already done, right? But just think about what would be fun for you to do and try to find a compromise between that and what your target audience thinks is fun. And just come up with an idea that's actually going to make you smile. Because I promise, even if you only do one project like that per quarter, your job satisfaction will improve. And that is something that your candidates will notice in every single interaction with you guys. So here I wanted to ask you, I promised I would, and I will do it now. What was your favorite sourcing idea from today? And there is an option of, I'll stick to what I know, that's fine, you know. If I didn't manage to convince you. It's very fun seeing those results. I don't know about you, but I think it's very fun. I'll obviously share the presentation, including your responses. So this is not just for me. I believe there might be an option for you guys to download the results as well. But I'm not going to lie, I'm not technical at all, not that comfortable with technology. So this was a huge experiment, and I'm happy we got through this so well. And I'm happy you seem to be enjoying it, because there's over 70 people already who applied. So the postcard from the future seems to work. Can I ask a simple question? Is anyone over here from the Czech Republic? Can you find the details of people who have their own businesses? Would the contractor thing work? If you have a business-to-business contract with a company, can I find your email, your home address? Not necessarily? Okay, business address. Yeah, but the business address will work. And if you have your own business, it's probably going to be your home, right? Because it might be. Or if it's not... Sorry? Okay, yeah, or co-working space. That's fine too, because whenever you have a business and you get any mail, you open it because, you know, fear of missing out, right? What if you don't open it? So you open it just to be safe, and what happens is... you get a great approach message. So this is why it could work. And a postcard is really cheap. If you make it fun, you can make it something fun, like a picture of the office with like a silhouette of a person missing, and just tell people, oh, see, you're missing from our picture. Come and join us. We need you. Just, again, make this a fun process for you. There's no one who will just stick to what they know. So that's great. And I really, really hope, I'm obviously not going to be able to check, but I really, really hope that next week you just use this to think of one fun idea that you can implement in your work. If there's anything more that you need in order to do so, if there's any help, if I can help you with any details, you can find me online and message me. And if you don't manage to find me, that's pretty bad for a sourcing crowd. So I sure hope you can. One last thing, I would have forgotten, but one last thing is, what one idea can you implement next week? And this is the reason why I'm doing this is, if I let you go before you do this, you're just not going to change anything about the way you work. And I want you to try at least one thing. Is it a new sourcing platform, GitHub, or maybe, Internations, Meetup? Are you going to check out what Goodreads is? And I'm not finishing my presentation until I have at least 5 answers here. Postcard? Yeah? You can do that next week. It's not very complicated to get a postcard, you know? New platforms, Meetup, okay. More funny messages? Good. I'm not into GIFs myself or memes, but you can try those. I'll go shopping. Yeah, see, it's always a good idea. That is always a good idea. And you should always be recruiting, right? So if you're really, it's a mission. It's not just a job, it's a mission. So do that when you go shopping too. I'm very happy I'm not going to hold you to it because it's anonymous, but I'm very happy about this filling up, and I really, really hope that you're going to use this. Thank you very much for sticking with me, the geeky husband. Awesome. I'm very happy that you stuck through this last presentation. It wasn't easy. You didn't fall asleep, so that's pretty good. A great result for both me and you. So thank you very much.
I really enjoy your excitement and happiness. It's great.
Yes.
I really love what you do. So, you have questions. What was your best unusual sourcing approach?
Oh, that's a funny story, because it's actually a bit of a mistake. I came up with this idea. Jim asked earlier who has a Gmail account, and in Poland, almost everyone has a Gmail account. And when you know that, you can pretty much guess people's email addresses, and you can then check whether they're correct on Google+. So I found this amazing developer. I guessed their email address, I checked it on Google+, and what I did was I sent a message to say, "Hi, is this you?" And then sent the LinkedIn profile because I really wanted to talk to that person, and so I guessed your email address. And the guy replied, so that's a win for me, but what he said was that apparently he laughed a lot at my message because his email address was available on his website. But he appreciates how keen I was.
Do you have any sourcing fail story?
Oh, I think that worked, right? You know what? 90% of my stories are fail stories. But I think it's fun. I once approached someone on Twitter. That was before I realized how Twitter works. And so their boss knew about this because what they did was, I did it in an open tweet. They replied to my tweet, tagging in their boss, saying, well, actually, maybe you come join us. Yeah, I got into trouble for that one, but it was fun nonetheless.
What's your favorite platform for contact candidates? And which one is the most effective?
I think this is something that no one can tell you. Unfortunately, in sourcing, there's really no answers. There's just more questions. So the question is, do you actually track it yourself? Do you know how to track it? Do you have any system to do that? You have to check yourself. There is an IT company that, funnily enough, what they discovered in Krakow is the best channel for contacting developers for them is Facebook. Which is crazy, right? If you message people on Messenger, you wouldn't think they would reply. But this is what they found. Clearly, their style is very, very, it goes well with the platform. So you have to measure this for yourself. I myself like emails because I can check when someone opens it. And I'm kind of a control freak. I want to know if you've opened my email or not. I also do it to my clients. So they tell me, oh, I never got your email. I know they got it.
They're still posting the one idea next week. Still. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's good. That's great. Yeah.
So, what was the result of the Postcard approach? What position did you fill, and how many candidates did you contact that way?
I'll be completely honest, that particular one was at idea stage. So I'm sure some companies did this. I cannot recall a particular case. And it's something that I've been talking to other sourcers about at a meetup. And then someone said, because it wasn't my idea with the contractors, then someone said, you know what? Do you notice how popular B2B contracts are in Poland? Do you know you can find the home address or business address for every single person that works as a contractor? You can actually send those postcards to their house. So this is why I decided to share it. This one you can actually implement one-to-one, and whoever is first is going to be quite creative.
Okay, last question. What do you think of creative sourcing using dating apps or sites?
So I myself have never tried that, but I'm going to say one thing. If I decide I'm so motivated to find someone special in my life that I actually go through the pain of setting up an online profile, it's a major disappointment if that person turns out to be a recruiter. That's just my perspective. But unless they also happen to be interested in a date, then I might consider it. But no, seriously, it's just, I think they are a little bit more difficult to source through, actually. So I don't think it's worth the effort, considering the potential, negative effects it could have.
Okay, Kasia Borowicz, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.